Rachel's question is, in terms of the qualities of our soul, what is spirituality in that context? I've always understood the spiritual journey to be separate, but supported by the soul journey. Is there crossover? Much love and God bless. I've often talked about the fact that we have a soul and a spirit, and they are slightly different. So they're both in the heart region. The spirit, if you like, is the keeping things really, really simple. The love and guiding light of God from God as a gift. That is part of what it is to be human, which sets us apart from everything else. We have a spirit, and that spirit's purpose is to inspire us, to motivate us when we're spiritual, which is why it's called spirituality. When we're spiritual, it's to motivate us to move literally towards God, and that movement is ultimately, it's a bit of an illusion, because it's not so much a movement as a letting go, letting go until you transcend, but it is basically movement towards God. And that would classically be done in a spiritual meditative journey. But there's also the spiritual journey in the sense of the devotional part, the coming from the heart part, the desire for God. In other words, all the while we're focused on self, we are fundamentally building, or in the realm of ego, when we start to realize that there is something greater, and then we start to show deference and devotion towards it, then we're starting to kind of go beyond the edges of ourself in how we think, act, and project. So the spiritual journey is all about movement towards God. Now, the soul journey, there is parallels, but the soul journey is different. Your soul, if you like, is the archive of the cumulative experiences you've had over every single lifetime up to this point, where it's like it stores the positive, good experiences. There is a memory component to it, but it's the energetics, it's the experience, okay? It's keeping things really simple. Every time you make a good choice, then you build your soul up in terms of it has more experience to draw on for the future. And so all the good choices you're making in this life are fundamentally based on the fact that you've made a lot of good choices in previous lives. And in Rachel's question, there is a reference to, in terms of qualities of our soul. So you could imagine, and obviously this isn't the way it is, but you could imagine that the soul has different buckets. So if you're demonstrating courage, then it goes in the courage bucket. If you're demonstrated wisdom, it goes in the wisdom bucket. And so broadly speaking, you can start to group these different experiences into different qualities. And all of these qualities are what you would find at the core of being good. Okay. And so wisdom, courage, fortitude, forbearance, these kinds of qualities. It's easier to recognize them in difficult times, because quite frankly, there's not much spiritual growth when things are easy. So when life is easy, when everything's going your way, most people will tend to just coast. When suddenly they hit a brick wall, metaphorically speaking, or a bump in the road, whether that's work, relationships, health, well-being, whatever it is, then they tend to wake up. And it's in those moments of prescience that they can make good choices. And so the soul is the accumulation of those good choices. And if you think in terms of the word good, meaning good or godly, then every time you make a good choice, you're demonstrating the good qualities of God. And so you as a person are becoming more good or godly. It doesn't mean you're becoming God, but you're becoming more godly. So the differentiation is that the spirit, if you like, is the ever-present light that already knows the direction to God. And the soul is the accumulation of your experiences where you are starting to represent more and more of those godly qualities in your life. So in a way, they're both movements towards God. But going back to Rachel's question then, in terms of qualities of our soul, what is spirituality in that context? One of the so-called soul qualities, or these buckets, is spirituality. And so whenever you as an individual either act or think or intend in a direction that is more spiritual, in other words, recognizing the fact that there is more than you, that you are incomplete, that there is something that is complete. And we're talking spiritually about God here, not religiously about God, but that acknowledgement, even if you can't vocalize it or contextualize it, that acknowledgement that there is something greater than yourself, that there is something that is if you like, absolute, beyond limits, beyond time, beyond edges, all of these things. Every time you encapsulate that in your behaviors and your thoughts, then you're building up that the bucket of spiritual soul qualities. And the spiritual journey doesn't really begin until a person has enough kind of like spiritual momentum within their soul that they will turn their attention towards their spirit. And one of the most beautiful experiences is when you have enough spirituality that you start to recognize your spirit within, and then your spirit literally is full of joy because you're starting to actually pay attention to what matters. The entire purpose of the multitude of lifetimes that you've had up to this point start to become fulfilled because you start to now pay attention to the light within your spirit, which is shining like a beacon to guide you in the direction of God. And I'm not talking about some religious bearded guy sitting on a cloud with a trident or any of those, other multitudinal representations of godlike figures. I'm talking about the absolute, that which is beyond definition. Okay, so when you spiritually awaken truly, it's done in a lifetime. So it's your soul and your brain both orientating towards your spirit with enough attention and not thinking. I'm talking about like from the heart, that there's this like joy because your soul suddenly realizes what's there, which is your spirit, and your spirit knows that now it can start its job and that you're now ready. And so it's a beautiful moment when it happens. And that is truly what spiritual awakening really is. It's not crystals or anything like that. It's something much more profound. And so to answer the question, yeah, you have to develop the soul's level of spirituality to prepare you for the spiritual journey. So they are separate, but they are entwined, if that makes sense. And you can't be spiritual based purely on your spirit, and you can't be spiritual in the absence of your spirit. In other words, your soul needs to be involved, your spirit needs to be involved, and you, right down here in the physical, your brain, your heart, your person, that which is the embodiment of your soul and your spirit in this life, has to be present as well. It can't be an unconscious thing. It has to be a deliberate, intentional, conscious thing. So with all that said, if we go back to the question and we look at Beverly's question on the other side, then we'll read that again and say, so if people in life have been presented that to have